Guys, so today's video is going to be a Stormlight Archive predictions video, but a very specific one that has to do with who has the potential to become Odium's champion, the different theories surrounding that. This will contain heavy spoilers for the first 3 books. I won't be mentioning anything that's on the preview chapters that are available online right now. It's really hard not to talk about those things. But regardless, I am going to be going into spoilers for the first 3 books. If it's been a while since you've read them, no worries. I'll recap you a little bit on the Odium's champion element of the story. So you may recall Dalinar has visions. They're actually like one of my least favorite things about Stormlight Archive because I'm always like, I don't know what any of this means. But I know for those of us that like to step back later and go, wait, what does that mean though? Then they're fun. In the moment, I'm like, can we talk about how sad Kaladin is? There's a specific vision at the beginning of Oathbringer that Dalinar has and has to do with this mysterious figure, Odium's champion. If you don't really remember Odium at all, it's an antagonistic force in the Stormlight Archive series, and Dalinar has this particular vision, a golden light, brilliant yet terrible, standing before it a dark figure in black shard plate. The figure had 9 shadows, each spreading out in a different direction, and its eyes glowed a brilliant red. Dalinar stared deep into those eyes and felt a chill wash through him. Though the destruction raged around him, vaporizing rocks, those eyes frightened him more. He saw something terribly familiar in them. This was a danger far beyond even the storms. This was the enemy's champion, and he was coming. So, a lot of people have debated who this particular figure could be, and the first theory is that the person is no one. That originally it was supposed to be Dalinar, that Odium was trying to groom Dalinar to be his champion, and then there's the whole you cannot have my pain thing, and Dalinar didn't fall to Odium. Another theory is that it is Dalinar and he will still end up becoming Odium's champion. I don't know that I agree with this simply because I think Dalinar is kind of past that and he is owning his pain and he's moving forward from it, and that whole element of Oathbringer was almost a redemption type arc showing that he has overcome this badness in him, if you will, and now he is aiming toward good. I don't think was Dalinar and then now will never happen, and I also don't think that it is Dalinar and will still happen to be Dalinar. I just think it's gonna be somebody else. The mention of the eyes looking so familiar could mean a couple different things. It could mean that it is somebody that Dalinar is somewhat close to, and therefore that is why there's so much familiarity there, or it could mean he's recognizing the thrill. If it's the thrill, it opens up a lot of doors. So I'm not really going to pursue that line of thinking. I will stick to it being somebody that Dalinar potentially knows. Now, one fan favorite theory is that it's going to be Moash, because we all hate that guy, especially given where Moash ends up by the end of those first 3 books, and he is honestly more on the side of evil at that point, but I think it's too obvious for it to be Moash, and also the idea that it would be familiar. Dalinar was never super close to Moash, so I don't really think that he would see that unless, again, he's seeing the thrill. But I just think Moash, I don't really see it being him just based off of other things I've read by Sanderson. I think he likes to be sneaky. I think he likes to present things that seem fairly obvious, and then it's not those things at all. And that also brings attention to the potential for this being a Parshendi. And that's the one that is probably the most obvious, is that, oh, it's just going to be a Parshendi because of their different forms. So the 9 shadows that are mentioned in that part, it could potentially be a Parshendi, especially the colors of the eyes, the color of the shard plate, all of that stuff really points to it being Parshendi. The only thing about this theory, it feels too obvious to me personally, but another one that comes up sometimes, and this one would break my heart if this happens, I feel like there's the potential for me to quit the series, and that would be Kaladin, just because I love Kaladin so much, and the guy has already been through so much in his life, to then like switch over, I'd be devastated. I can see people wanting it to happen because I think that would be maybe the most shocking, because of everything Kaladin has been through and everything he's overcome, to fall to that. But the idea in Oathbringer of Odium saying, you know, let me have your pain, and Dalinar's like, no, it's my pain. Just like that too. That's exactly how they talk. Kaladin, he has so much pain, and I could see him wanting to rid himself of that pain, and I don't think he will, though, because he is arguably the most honorable figure. Obviously, Dalinar is honorable now, but Kaladin has been through so much, and yeah, he's stumbled, but I wouldn't say he's ever really completely fallen. There's, he starts to drift a little bit in Words of Radiance, but he ultimately goes to good. He always sees good. If anything, I feel like I was about to say Dalinar. I feel like Kaladin, I don't even want to say it, but I feel like he would die before he would become bad, and his death would potentially be his own doing before he would live life on the other side. I just don't see him ever doing that, especially with the amount of times that he is devastated by seeing destruction. I just don't ultimately think that he would go through with it. But maybe that's just me having wishful thinking. Another theory that I find fascinating, and I don't know how much I agree with, but if it happened, I would find it very interesting, and that would be Shallan. So I don't know about that, but I like the idea. I also think Shallan is so bizarre and interesting that I think a lot of people would find her plot progression into becoming a villain really fascinating, because she is kind of twisted, and I think her powers are less to do with honor the way Kaladin's are, and more to do with like secrets and lies and things like that, where I think it could be a really interesting transition for her arc. I don't know that I buy into it completely, but I like it. The last character I'm going to talk about is the one that you likely have seen coming if you know my ultimate prediction for the first arc of the Stormlight Archive series, and that is that I think Adolin really has the potential. And I have more evidence to back up this one, because this is a theory I've had for a while. Adolin has just kind of been on the sidelines for so long. Everybody else is starting to have power, and he was somebody who didn't used to be on the sidelines. He was this amazing duelist. He was born into a lot of privilege, and then he's seeing all these other people around him. His wife, his father, one of the bridgemen that saved him and his dad, and it was a Dark Eyes. He's seeing all these other people elevate themselves, get these powers, and there are even passages where he looks at Kaladin and thinks like, I can never compete with that, look how majestic he is, he can fly. However, as much as I joke around in my other videos about not liking Adolin, which really bothers people, and sometimes I'm like, guys, he's fictional. As much as I joke around about it, ultimately he has the like hashtag nice guy personality, where he's not just a tool bag going around like kicking people when they're down. He makes an effort to be nice and jovial and jolly. So I think a lot of people are like, no, he would never go bad. And I think there are certain elements. I mean, the saddest part, if you go back and read that part, he doesn't just decide like, I'm just gonna fight him now. It's not like he gets vicious, and there's a potential for him to have been affected. You could argue that it wasn't even him entirely, but that he is being affected by an unmade, that he's somehow being affected by Odium potentially. The familiarity part, there's a theory about Renarin. I think that would be too out of left field personally, so I'm sticking with Adolin and the familiarity element being that Dalinar is seeing the familiarity of his own son. That would be devastating too. Oh man, I just feel like it would be such good storytelling. I mean, Sanderson knows better than me what he's doing. Whatever he has in mind is going to be better than whatever I predict, but wouldn't that be so depressing if Dalinar had to face off? So there's specific things I'm going to mention that point to some other elements that kind of, I think, back up this theory. First is just the meaning of Adolin's name and how it has to correlate with the vision itself. So a reminder, in the vision it said a golden light, brilliant yet terrible, and just that part of it. And then Adolin's name, which means born unto light. Something about that just rings a little extra specific, and Sanderson doesn't just throw things in. This could just be a world building element, and it also has to do with Evie and the way in which her culture was different than the Alethi and things like that. It could have just been a world element detail. But I also wonder if it has to do a little bit with this brilliant light and Adolin's name, meaning born into light. It seems a little suspicious. That one's a little out there. It's a little out there, but there's another part where Adolin says, he said, my name is Adolin : I was born under the sign of the 9. Sanderson never throws in random details like that without meaning. And the 9 shadows, and Adolin randomly saying one day, I was born under the sign of the 9. Now, other people have said, okay, but others in their world would be born unto the sign of the 9. But I mean, who else that's familiar to Dalinar is born under the sign of the 9? Who else? I feel like that's such a random detail for Adolin to just say at one point. Why else is that there? Also, Dalinar, when he is speaking to Honor, it says that Honor tells him that humanity's best chance of survival in the coming conflict involves forcing Odium to accept a contest of champions. That particular element feels very similar to the idea of a duel. And Adolin is the duelist in the series. So that also, I feel, that kind of goes along with this. A really bizarre part of me thinks it would be fascinating if he became the champion and Shallan and all her personalities were the 9 shadows. I don't think that's going to happen, but that would be really interesting to see unfold. Another thing that could potentially be pointing to Adolin becoming Odium's champion, or at the very least some kind of antagonistic being, is the placement of him on the cover of Rhythm of War. So every cover beforehand, on the left-hand side of the cover, you will see some form of an antagonist. So the first one, you see the Parshendi. The second one, you see Szeth. The third one, you see the Thunderclast. And then on the fourth one, mysteriously, you have, what, a good guy? You have Adolin? That seems weird to me, that you would just all of a sudden break this consistency in the art and this representation in the art for no reason. We just wanted to include, like, 2 good guys now? I don't know. There are, of course, theories that Adolin's going to try and restore Maya, and likely in doing so will then become a Radiant himself. He'll become an Edge Dancer, I believe, if that is what happens. And I think that would be a way a roundabout way for Adolin to join the rest of the gang. But there's a part of me that's like, are we really going to turn every single one of our characters into a Radiant? I mean, maybe we will, and it will probably be awesome, and if he has a roundabout way, then that makes sense. But I don't know. Adolin to me is somebody that little moment when he kills Sadeas is very satisfying, don't get me wrong, but it's vicious, and it shows that he has the ability to snap because of something. What will make him snap in the future to become Odium's champion? There is the fact that he loved his mother, and he didn't know the truth about how she died. And then currently, we end Oathbringer with him and Shallan getting married, but Shallan is kind of not doing so great. And I don't know how that's going to affect their marriage, if something's going to happen in their marriage that could lead Adolin to feel a certain way. And the Sadeas thing, getting back to that, he's not really faced the repercussions of that in any really significant way. And I have a feeling that something is going to force him. There's going to be all these things. There's this wedge between him and his wife, potentially. There's this wedge between him and his father, potentially. And then there's just his reputation if other people start finding out the truth about what happened with Sadeas. I'm very curious to see your thoughts. Who do you think will be Odium's champion, or do you think that plotline is already dead and over? I would love to see your thoughts. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.